I slept with another woman's boyfriend. In the middle of it, he whispered, "I love you, but not to me." I laughed, got dressed, and left him standing there. Hours later, he texted me, begging me not to tell her. He said, "I love you," like he meant it. Voice low, shaky, almost reverent. I was on top of him, my hand on his chest, my mouth close to his ear. And then he said her name, not mine, Hannah. He whispered it like a habit, like something his body defaulted to when the rest of him stopped pretending. My body froze before my brain caught up. There wasn't a scream, no slap, just this pause, tight and airless, where everything inside me got real, real quiet. And then I laughed, not hysterically, just one sharp, breathless sound, a single exhale of disbelief that came out through my teeth before I could stop it. He looked up at me, eyes wide like maybe I'd misheard him. Like maybe if he stared at me long enough, I'd doubt my own ears. I didn't. I rolled off him and sat at the edge of the bed, heartbeat calm, almost measured. I stared at the floor. One sock near the nightstand. My bra half tangled in the blanket. The lamp casting a soft yellow light across the wall. All of it too quiet, too ordinary for what had just happened. Alex stayed still. His hand hovered like he might reach for me. He didn't. I could feel him panicking in real time, not because he was afraid of hurting me, because he was afraid I'd do something with the truth. He whispered again, this time careful, "Wait, hey." I stood up and reached for my clothes. One piece at a time, calm, methodical, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I knew silence would. I didn't ask why he said her name, because I already knew. He didn't love me, not even close. I was a placeholder, a thrill. A mirror he stared into when he was bored of his own life. He didn't see me, he saw his own power reflected back, and I let him. I told myself I didn't care, that I knew what this was, that I wasn't a fool because I was in on the game. But I hadn't realized how far I'd gone in pretending not to feel anything, until he reminded me, mid-thrust, who he actually belonged to. And it wasn't me. I pulled my shirt over my head, stepped into my jeans, and grabbed my keys from the floor. He sat up finally, sheets falling to his waist. "Nora," he said, my name this time, but it was too late. It didn't land. I walked to the door without looking back. My hand on the knob, I paused, not because I doubted myself, just to let the moment stretch to let him sit in it. Then I opened it and left, and behind me, Alex sat there, naked, silent, still holding the weight of the name he wished I hadn't heard. I dressed in silence. Not the kind that begs for attention, not theatrical, just exact. Shirt, jeans, shoes, no rush, no hesitation. Like I was folding the last page of a story I didn't need to finish. Alex stayed in bed. His eyes followed me, but he didn't move. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, no confidence, no charm, just a man suddenly stripped of his script. He said my name once, just once. I didn't answer. I looped my bag over my shoulder. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it. I didn't even think to. My entire focus was on the door, the clean line between here and not here. When I reached for the handle, he moved, just slightly, like a reflex. Like maybe this was the part where I turned around, sat back down, asked, "What did you mean by that?" But I didn't, because I already knew what he meant. He didn't love me, he loved being loved. He loved the thrill of being wanted by two people at once, the weight of desire without the cost of honesty. He was never going to leave her, and I was never going to ask him to. So I opened the door. He said, "Please wait." I paused for half a breath, not because I was tempted, because I wanted him to feel it, the way quiet can echo louder than rage. Then I stepped into the hallway, pulled the door shut behind me, and left him standing there, half naked and wordless in the ruins of his own performance. The hallway was cold, bright, real, and I didn't feel shame. I didn't feel guilt. I felt clean. I walked out like someone who just emptied a room of everything that didn't belong to her. Not in anger, not in grief, just done. At 4:19 a.m., the first message came in. "Please don't tell her." No punctuation, no context, just panic distilled into 5 words. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, I was drunk. I didn't mean it. Then, you knew what this was. It didn't have to be like this. I watched them roll in one after the other. Each one a little more desperate, a little less polished. The curated version of Alec unraveling at the seams. I wasn't surprised. People like him don't fall apart all at once. They peel back in layers, still performing, still selling you the story even as it burns around them. The next message was longer. I know I messed up, but please don't destroy this. She doesn't know anything. She doesn't need to. That moment, it didn't mean anything. You meant something too. That part made me laugh, not out loud. Just a quiet, amused exhale in the dark. You meant something too. As if he was offering me a consolation prize for his mistake. Like I should be flattered to even be remembered. I turned my phone face down on the nightstand. The silence between his messages stretched. Then another ping, just talk to me, please. We can figure this out. We already had. Just not in the way he wanted. The figuring was over the second he said a name that wasn't mine. He just hadn't caught up to that truth yet. There's a point in every lie where the liar realizes they've lost control of the narrative. Alec was hitting that point, one text at a time. And me, I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was watching someone try to undo what he thought was an accident, but what I knew was the only honest thing he'd said all night. I didn't block him, not yet. I wanted him to sit in it. The silence. The space where his charm didn't work. The part where I didn't play the role he expected me to. I lay back in bed, the phone still buzzing, and thought, this is what it looks like when you break your own story and someone else stops cleaning it up for you. I met Alec at a bar I wasn't supposed to be at. Not in some dramatic, forbidden sense. Just one of those nights when a friend cancels last minute and you go out anyway. Alone, not looking for anything, not looking either. He asked if the seat next to me was taken. I said no. He asked what I was drinking. I made a joke about the bartender's heavy pour. He laughed like I was the most interesting woman in the room. Looking back, it wasn't chemistry. It was choreography. He was good. Casual, easy, just enough self-deprecation to feel disarming. At one point, I asked the question, half playful, half test. So, are you single or just bad at commitment? He grinned and said, basically single. I remember that exact phrase. Basically, I nodded like that made sense. Like it wasn't code for I'm lying to you, but I'm charming enough that you'll forgive it. He talked about how things were complicated. That he and someone had been together on and off, but it wasn't really a relationship. That she was great, but it was fading. That he hadn't felt seen in a long time. I didn't ask for more, because I didn't want more, not from him. That's the part I don't rewrite. I didn't fall for him. I fell for the simplicity of not having to feel anything that wasn't convenient. I let myself believe what he offered because it kept things clean. Fun. Contained. We saw each other when it was easy, when it wouldn't interfere with whatever else he had going on. When his schedule opened up at the exact moments, I didn't have the energy to ask questions. He always texted first, always followed up, always made it seem like I wasn't just some background noise. I didn't believe him, but I pretended to. That's what self-deception looks like, I think. Not some big lie you tell yourself in the mirror. Just small moments where you look away instead of looking closer. The night he said her name out loud, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt seen. Because finally, he'd said the thing we both knew, that someone else had always been in the room with us. That I was never alone in this story, even when it was just the two of us. I let myself play along for too long, and he let me because it suited him. We were a performance, and we both knew the lines. Tasha didn't flinch when I told her. We were sitting in her kitchen, both of us holding mugs we didn't really want, and I laid it out as plainly as I could. No build-up, no disclaimers. I slept with someone who has a girlfriend, I said. She didn't gasp, didn't scold. She raised one eyebrow and said, and you're shocked he turned out to be that kind of guy. I didn't answer right away. Tasha stirred her tea slowly. She always did that, methodical, unbothered. The kind of person who could see through everyone and still have the decency not to rub it in. I'm not shocked, I said. I'm just embarrassed you let it get that far. I nodded. She didn't offer sympathy. That's never been her job in my life. She offered precision, reality without the fluff. You knew he had a girlfriend, you just didn't think it would hit you this hard when he proved it. There was no cruelty in it. Just truth. I exhaled. He said her name during. Tasha held up a hand. Spare me the cinematic details. I smiled in spite of myself. She looked at me. Look, she said, this isn't about being a villain or a victim. It's about being honest with yourself. I didn't think I cared, I said. I thought I could keep it separate. You thought you were in control. That part landed harder than I wanted it to. Tasha leaned back in her chair. You didn't fall in love with him. You fell in love with being the exception, with being the person he made time for. That's the part that stings. I hated that she was right. Do you think I should tell her? I asked. I think that's not the real question. What is? She looked me dead in the eye. Why are you pretending you don't already know what kind of man he is? I looked away because I did know. I'd always known. And saying that out loud meant admitting I'd chosen to be part of something that was never mine to begin with. I found Hannah's Instagram 2 days later. I didn't go looking for it. Not exactly. I typed her name into the search bar the way people type something just to see if it autofills. It did. Second account from the top. Public. Her profile picture was a blurry photo of her and Alec at a concert, their heads leaned together, faces glowing in that way couples always seem to glow under stage lights. Happy, close, like the crowd and the noise and the lights all bent around them. I tapped. It was everything I expected. Smiling brunch photos, lazy Sunday snapshots, captions like "My favorite place is next to you." Birthday posts with 10-slide carousels and inside jokes and "I can't believe I get to love you." One video of Alec and Hudson, their golden retriever, lying on the couch. His voice in the background, baby talking the dog. Hannah laughed behind the camera. I stared at that one the longest. There was no guilt, not in the way people imagine it, not a collapse. Just this quiet, heavy hum. Like pressing your hand to a speaker, playing a song you don't like but know every word to anyway. Her life looked seamless. Like he was good to her. Like he was what she believed he was. And maybe he was most of the time. That's the part people don't get about men like Alec. They're not monsters. They're skilled. They're generous in public, affectionate in photos, always just attentive enough that when things don't feel right, you blame yourself. I kept scrolling. Hannah had a kind face. Nothing performative about her. She looked like the kind of woman who wrote thank you cards and remembered birthdays without alarms. Someone who believed in people, in love, in her boyfriend. Someone who would never expect that a woman like me existed behind the scenes. Someone who sat on her boyfriend's couch when she wasn't home. Who didn't flinch when he texted late at night. Who rationalized everything as not her fault. And she wasn't the villain. Neither was I, but he was the common thread. I closed the app, locked my phone, stared at the ceiling. It didn't sting because I wanted him. It stung because I finally saw the full shape of what I'd been part of. And I couldn't unsee it. The voice showed up that night, not dramatic, not ominous, just clear, familiar even, like someone who'd been sitting in the background waiting for me to stop making excuses. It said, "You could ruin him, you know." I was lying in bed, lights off, Finn snoring at the foot. My phone rested on the nightstand, screen dark, but I knew the screenshots were still there. The texts, the timestamps. The way Alec called me babe in one breath and begged me to keep quiet in the next. Evidence. That's what they were now. Not memories, not mistakes, just evidence. You could destroy this entire thing with one message, the voice whispered. One screenshot, one forward, one just so you know. I didn't move because it was true. I could take her perfect grid and drop a bomb in the middle of it. Shatter the golden hour lighting, the soft smiles, the Sunday captions. The power sat in my hands, quiet and waiting. And it terrified me, not because I didn't want to use it, but because I wanted to a little. That was the worst part, not the sex, not the lie. But the realization that I could make someone else feel the way I did, cut open, betrayed, stupid, and part of me thought maybe that would even things out. But that part of me, it was a shadow, and I knew better than to chase it. I lay there, the silence pressing in, the voice circling like a thought I didn't want to finish. It would be so easy. One tap, one send, no explanation required. But I didn't reach for the phone, because I knew what it would cost me. Peace is fragile, hard one, and revenge always comes at a higher price than it advertises. I turned over, pulled the blanket up, closed my eyes. The voice didn't leave, but it didn't push either. It just waited. He didn't stop. Even after silence. After I walked out and stayed gone. After I ignored every message, every vague attempt at justification, he kept texting. "You don't understand. She's not like you. She's sensitive. She trusts me. It would break her." The irony sat heavy in every word. He wasn't afraid of hurting Hannah. He was afraid of being seen for what he was. Fragile wasn't her. Fragile was him. I read the messages in the grocery store, in line at the post office. On my couch with Finn watching me like even he knew I shouldn't be engaging. I wasn't engaging, but I was still watching it unfold. And every message said the same thing, even when the words changed. Protect me from what I did. He never asked how I felt. Never said, I'm sorry I dragged you into this. It was always about her. His girlfriend, the woman he loved. The image he didn't want cracked. And in that, the whole story clarified. He didn't feel guilty about sleeping with me. He felt guilty about being caught. That's why he kept saying it would ruin her. As if her being heartbroken would be my fault. As if the truth was only dangerous if I decided to tell it. I stared at his name on my phone and thought, you keep calling her fragile like it's a reason to keep lying, but I think it's the reason you should have told the truth a long time ago. He didn't want to protect Hannah. He wanted to protect the version of himself she still believed in. The one who made her coffee in the morning, who knew the names of all her coworkers, who took photos of their dog from flattering angles, who held her hand at brunch like he wasn't texting someone else under the table. The Alec she trusted. The Alec I watched unravel. I didn't respond. And that was the first real consequence he'd ever had to sit in. The next message was shorter. It was just sex. 4 words, flat, almost clinical. Like we'd exchanged something mechanical and cold. Like I hadn't watched him study my face in the dark or listened to him ask about my day like he wanted to remember the answer. Like we hadn't laughed between kisses. Like he hadn't whispered things he probably recycled from wherever he practiced being sincere. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I typed, I knew what this was. Did you? No punctuation. No extra flair, just the question. He read it immediately. Didn't reply. I sat with that for a while. Because here's the thing, I hadn't been confused. Not really. I didn't mistake this for love. I didn't expect breakfast or roses or commitment, but I did expect honesty, even the rough kind. Alec had sold me clarity, then handed me fog. He wanted the perks of transparency without the cost of being seen. He wanted the illusion of connection, the intimacy of familiarity, the convenience of detachment. He wanted to say it was just sex so he could tell himself he wasn't responsible for the wreckage. But you can't pull someone into your orbit, make them complicit, make them careful, then act like it was meaningless. I'd been a willing participant. I own that. But he was the one who couldn't admit it for what it was. Because just sex doesn't make you whisper another woman's name while you're inside someone else. That's not casual. That's fractured. And in that fracture, he showed me everything I needed to know, that he wanted to keep pretending. That he thought if he said it small enough, I'd shrink my memory of it down to match. But I didn't. I left it exactly the size it was, and I didn't text him again. The voice came back, but it sounded different this time. Not seductive. Not sharp, just curious. What's the cost of silence? It came while I was brushing my teeth, while I was folding laundry, while I was scrolling through a recipe I wouldn't cook. It came in the space between distractions, soft, insistent, steady. What does your silence protect? It wasn't a moral question. It wasn't about being the better person. It was about weight, about where I'd placed mine. I had carried Alec's secret like it was mine to manage. I'd let his guilt take up space without permission. I'd let his fear set the terms. He was scared of being exposed. I was scared of being reduced. That's what silence does. It poses as peace while demanding you hold the tension for everyone else. I kept thinking, if I don't say anything, I'm not complicit. But maybe I was, not because I owed Hannah anything. Not because I needed revenge, but because some truths, when swallowed too long, turn toxic. I started hearing the voice in quieter places, when I passed couples on the street, when I saw a dog that looked like Hudson, when I got into bed and reached for my phone, only to catch myself before opening the thread I'd already muted. If you were her, wouldn't you want to know? That one hit hardest, because I would, every time. Not because I'd want the pain, but because I'd want the choice. The dignity of not being the last one to see the whole picture. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Permission? Closure? I wasn't even sure what justice would look like. But the voice wouldn't let me pretend that staying quiet was noble. It wasn't. It was just easier. And easy wasn't the same as right. I wasn't supposed to see her. It was a random Tuesday, the kind where nothing feels urgent. I'd gone to the cafe near my apartment, the one with the burnt espresso and bad chairs, but it was quiet, and I needed quiet. Finn waited outside, tied to the bike rack, gnawing on the end of his leash like it was part of the plan. I was halfway through a lukewarm latte when I looked up and there she was. Hannah, ordering at the counter, smiling at the barista, tipping like it mattered. She looked exactly like her photos. That same open face, unstyled hair. A warmth you couldn't fake even if you tried. She was wearing a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big and leggings with a rip in the ankle, and somehow she still looked like the most sure person in the room. And she had no idea. That was the part that burned. She wasn't some caricature. She wasn't dramatic or oblivious or naive. She was kind, effortless. The kind of person who probably remembered birthdays without Facebook reminders and asked follow-up questions in conversations because she genuinely cared. She didn't look like someone who'd been betrayed. She looked safe. I watched her pick up her drink, thank the barista again, and turn toward my side of the room. We made eye contact. She smiled, and I nodded. That was all. Just one small, polite nod. The kind you give strangers you'll never see again, except I'd already seen too much. She walked past me and out the door. I turned slightly enough to see her reach down to unclip Finn. He licked her hand like he'd known her forever. She laughed and said something to him before walking off. I sat frozen, not from panic, from weight, from the brutal, unbearable stillness of realizing the woman I'd been orbiting this whole time had a laugh that made dogs love her instantly. And I couldn't even meet her eyes for more than 2 seconds. Not because I was guilty, but because she didn't deserve what any of us had made her carry without her ever knowing she was holding it. I almost did it. She left her napkin on the table, white, clean, still slightly damp from where her cup had been. I stared at it for a long time after she walked out, like it had a shape I needed to memorize. The pen was already in my bag, always is. I pulled it out without thinking, wrote 4 words. He said your name, that's it. No explanation, no punctuation, just the truth, bare and quiet. I folded the napkin in half, then in half again. Slipped it under the edge of her empty mug like I was tucking something away. Like I was hiding it for her to find if the universe decided she should. And then I sat there, not moving, not breathing much. I pictured her coming back. Picking it up, reading it. I imagined her face folding in on itself, her hands shaking, maybe pulling out her phone in disbelief. Maybe calling him, maybe calling me, or maybe saying nothing at all. Maybe just carrying it home in her coat pocket like a slow-burning fuse. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't writing to help her. I was writing to hurt him. It wasn't justice. It was a warning shot. I reached for the napkin. Unfolded it, smoothed it out, read the words one last time. Then folded it again, tighter this time, and put it in my coat pocket. I didn't leave it on the table. I didn't throw it away either. I took it home. Because there are some truths you hold not to bury, but to remind yourself that even silence has weight. That napkin lived in my drawer for weeks, between receipts and pens and keys to things I'd stopped unlocking. It was the closest I'd ever come to detonating someone else's life. And I didn't, but I still don't know if that makes me better, or just more careful. Tasha didn't even blink when I told her I'd seen Hannah. She was curled up on my couch with her feet under a blanket, a bowl of popcorn in her lap that she wasn't sharing with Finn, despite his best efforts. She was nice, I said. Too nice. Tasha looked over. And I almost told her, wrote it down on a napkin. She raised an eyebrow. I didn't leave it, I added. She nodded like she'd already assumed that. What stopped you? I don't know. She gave me a look. The kind she saves for when I'm pretending I haven't already done the math. You do know, she said. You just don't like the answer. I sat down across from her. It felt like too much or not enough. Like it would either destroy her or bounce off her and do nothing. And I couldn't figure out which one scared me more. Tasha popped a piece of popcorn into her mouth. You're asking the wrong question. I waited. She turned toward me, legs crossed. Forget what it would do to her. Ask yourself what you'd want if you were her. I stared at the wall for a second, not thinking, just bracing. Then I said it. Every time, I'd want to know. No matter how bad. Tasha didn't gloat, She didn't nod like finally. She just sat there and let the answer sit where it landed. Then you already know what this is, she said. It's not about guilt. It's not about revenge. It's about truth. You're holding something that isn't yours to keep. I didn't argue. I couldn't. She was right. She always is. And this time, it didn't feel like she was lecturing me. It felt like she was handing me a mirror. Because for the first time, I wasn't seeing Hannah as the other woman. I was seeing her as me. As someone who deserved the full story. As someone who would have wanted it, even if it shattered everything. I started organizing the screenshots. Not to send, not yet, maybe not ever, but I needed to see them lined up. I needed to hold the proof in one place. Proof that it happened. That I hadn't imagined the way he spoke to me. The names he used. The timestamps that overlapped with the brunch photos and soft captions he left on Hannah's feed. There were dozens. Some texts were flirty. Some apologetic. Some just bored check-ins that felt harmless until you remembered what they were covering for. He always sounded casual, always knew just how to say enough without saying anything. The folder wasn't dramatic. I didn't title it something poetic or bitter. I named it with the date. That was enough. The images sat on my desktop like a quiet insurance policy. Not for leverage, not to use against him. For me. So I could stop rewriting the story in my head. Because the more time passed, the easier it became to downplay what it was. To tell myself I wasn't really involved, that he didn't lie that often, that maybe I'd misunderstood parts of it, that maybe it was just a phase, a moment, a temporary slide into something blurry. The folder said otherwise. It said, "No, you saw this clearly. Don't pretend otherwise just because it would be easier to forget. Sometimes we don't collect evidence to act on it. We collect it because memory isn't always trustworthy, because shame likes to revise, because silence has a way of smoothing over the parts that cut too close." I wasn't ready to use it, but I wasn't deleting it either. And that was the difference between avoidance and accountability. I was no longer pretending I didn't know what happened. I just wasn't sure what to do with the truth now that it was organized. His last message came late, almost midnight, like he knew I'd be awake. Like he was still hoping he lived rent-free in the corner of my mind where doubt lives. It was longer than the others. "Please, I love her. Don't ruin this. You don't have to do anything. Just let it go. I'm asking you. Please." I read it twice. Not because I needed to, just to feel the shift, the difference between someone begging for grace and someone begging to avoid consequence. I didn't feel anything. No heat, no ache, not even anger, just stillness. Because I finally saw it clearly, he didn't love her. He loved the life she let him have. The version of himself she protected just by believing in him. And he didn't want to lose that. Not to me, not to himself. The word please rang hollow, like a reflex. There was no apology, just an instruction, an expectation. That I would carry the burden of silence a little longer so he could keep pretending. I didn't respond, not this time. I went to the thread, scrolled all the way to the top. Every message, every excuse. Every line he'd drawn and redrawn depending on who he was trying to keep close and who he was trying to push just far enough away. Then I selected all. Deleted. Thread gone, just like that. Not as revenge, not as closure. As detachment, because I didn't need to keep his words anymore. Not to remember, not to justify, not to punish. They weren't mine to carry. And letting go wasn't about forgiveness. It was about refusing to hold a story that never deserved me in the first place. I started writing it down, not in texts, not in notes on my phone. Real writing, pen, paper, the kind of honesty that doesn't autocorrect. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't relive the details for effect. I just wrote what happened. When I met him, what he said. The way I let myself believe it because believing was easier than confronting what I already knew. I wrote about the first time he kissed me. The first time I saw his name pop up while I was still deciding if I cared. The first time I realized I did, I wrote about the moment he said Hannah's name, how I froze, how I laughed, how I dressed in silence and didn't slam the door, didn't cry, didn't give him anything he could throw back at me later. And then I wrote about the aftermath, about the texts, the begging, the denial dressed up as regret, the way silence became its own kind of response, the way I stopped needing him to understand what he did. I didn't write it to punish myself. I wrote it because I needed it outside of my body, because memory distorts. Shame edits. Time polishes things that were always sharp. I needed to put it somewhere that didn't breathe. Some truths aren't for revenge, they're for reckoning. I didn't write her name, not once. She deserved more than to be a footnote in his collapse. This wasn't about Hannah, this was about me, about finally telling the story without softening it, without excusing it, without trying to make it make sense. I filled 3 pages before I stopped. No wrap-up, no conclusion. Just the truth lined up. It felt like stretching out after holding a breath for too long. Not relief, not healing, just space. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up in the middle of the night, wondering what he'd say next. Because there was nothing left for him to say. The days started passing without me noticing, not in a dramatic, sun-through-the-curtains kind of way, just quietly, cleanly, like a clock that keeps working even after the alarm stopped mattering. No texts, no new messages, no unread notifications with his name. No half-hearted thinking about you or sudden performative apologies, just stillness. And it didn't feel empty. It felt like oxygen. I started walking more. With Finn in the mornings, headphones in, playlist low. I wasn't thinking big thoughts. I wasn't journaling with intensity. I was just moving, doing dishes, answering emails, folding laundry without letting the old messages echo in my head. One afternoon, I caught myself smiling at nothing. Just the light hitting the floor in a way that made my apartment feel like mine again. I texted Tasha a photo of Finn on his back, legs in the air, the caption, "He says hi, he's thriving." She sent back a gif of a man sipping wine alone on a patio with sunglasses on. No words, none needed. This wasn't a transformation montage. There was no sudden wave of empowerment, just small recalibrations. No guilt when I exhaled. No internal review of what I should have done differently. Just me showing up to my life without the pressure of covering for someone else's lies. I didn't check Hannah's Instagram anymore. I didn't reread the screenshots. I didn't ask myself whether I should have said more. Because the silence was no longer a burden. It was proof that I was finally back in my own skin. Not performing, not waiting, just living. I wrote the message. Not in a moment of rage, not out of grief, just clarity. It started simple, her name, a short explanation, what he said, when he said it, how I walked out before he could spin it into something softer. No commentary, no opinion, just the facts. Then I paused, deleted half, started again. This time I added one line at the end, "You don't owe me anything. I just thought you should know," and that was it. No pictures, no files, no timeline of texts to prove it, just enough to open a door if she wanted to walk through it. I didn't send it, I read it twice, sat with it, let it sit inside the drafts folder like a live wire. I imagined what might happen if I pressed send, her face, her voice, the unraveling. And I realized I didn't want that to be my legacy in this story. Not because she didn't deserve to know, but because I didn't want to be the one who pulled the thread. I wanted the truth to exist, ready if it was needed. But not weaponized, not broadcasted, just available. There's a kind of power in restraint. In knowing you have the truth and knowing that keeping it close isn't always the same as keeping it buried. I closed the draft, didn't delete it, didn't rename it, just left it there. Waiting, not for him, not even for her, but for the moment when silence would no longer feel like peace and I'd know exactly what to do. The voice went quiet, not all at once, just gradually. It stopped offering commentary when I walked past couples. It stopped whispering hypotheticals at night. It stopped asking what might have happened if I'd said more, done less, stayed longer. It used to pipe up when I needed to feel sharp, when I wanted to remind myself that I was right, that I had the upper hand, that I could end him if I wanted to. But now it didn't say anything, because I didn't need it to. The strength it gave me wasn't a crutch anymore. It had done its job, carried me through the mess, kept me from slipping into softness too soon, and then it let go. There was no ceremony, no final thought, just space. And in that space, I realized something. I hadn't just been trying to survive Alec. I'd been trying to survive myself. The version of me that agreed to his conditions. That swallowed questions. That called it control when it was really just quiet desperation. That girl. She wasn't weak. She was tired, tired of being careful, tired of pretending that not needing someone was the same as being free, tired of acting like silence made her better. But I wasn't her anymore. I didn't need the voice to keep me upright. I was upright on my own. I saw Alec for what he was. I saw Hannah for who she'd been. And most importantly, I saw myself clearly, quietly, without defense. The mess didn't undo me. It revealed me, and for the first time, I wasn't fighting against the story. I was just done living inside it. I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee, still warm, still full. Finn lay stretched beside me, his head resting on my bare foot. The breeze was light. The sky was soft. No messages, no noise, just me, not thinking about Alec, not replaying what I should have said to Hannah, not trying to calculate the moral weight of staying quiet versus telling the truth. I was just here, in my body, in my life, in a moment that didn't need to mean anything bigger than itself. No dramatic ending, no karmic balance. Just the fact that I was no longer waiting for someone to explain why I should feel okay. I felt okay, that was it. I didn't need closure because I had presence. I didn't need justice because I had peace. The phone stayed inside. The draft stayed unsent, and I stayed still. I sipped my coffee slowly. No urgency, no edge, just enough heat to remind me I was here, awake, alive in a body that no longer belonged to a story someone else wrote. I watched Finn blink into the breeze, the city humming below us like background music I didn't need to understand. No apologies, no revenge, no resolution, just me, breathing, quiet, free. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.